go into it. So ST3 Sports to Growing Environment, Assessment 2, Water and Irrigation Portfolio. So in question 6, it's just a case of sort of the process around irrigation. And Richard allocated us each a topic to talk about, and mine was water source. So all irrigation systems require a water source, and there are many types, but the ones that I'm discussing here are surface water, groundwater sources, and recycled water. So just a few examples of irrigation water sources. And just going clockwise from the left, you have dams or ponds, streams, and if you could just take note, there's a little intake gate there that I've got an arrow showing. And then you have
Russell, we're still on the first page, mate. Just so you know.
I wonder why.
Yeah, I've lost it. I've just got a big R. Oh, there we go. Got it now.
It's changed it.
So what can you see now? Water source?
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
All right. Shall we rewind? Okay, I'll rewind it. Okay. All irrigation systems require a water source, so that's a critical starting point. The main water sources used for irrigating turf are obtained from surface water, groundwater sources, and recycled water. I've moved on to the next slide. Can anyone see the photograph?
No, you're still on the number 2.
Why is that?
You might just need to click on the next page.
I hear what you're saying. So not like a normal slideshow.
Yeah, there we go.
Is that alright?
Yep.
Okay,
now you should be able to use your arrows, hopefully, to go up and down.
Alright, well, let's hope. So some photographs of water sources. Going from the left clockwise, we have dams or ponds. Streams can also be used. Tanks, boreholes or aquifers, and then obviously your town supply. When selecting the best water source for your area, you need to consider availability, and that also includes the amount, not necessarily just the availability of it, the quality of the water, and then a critical factor, how much that's going to cost you. And just at the bottom, you can see a sliding scale from most expensive to cheaper options, and your town supply being the most costly option. Availability and supply volume. Critical factors here is that, and I chatted about it briefly, that you have sufficient volume, and especially during summer. For example, turf areas that rely on a lake need to ensure that the lake is large enough to supply all the water needs in the driest years. And then you still have to consider your local councils that may restrict or even stop you taking water over summer. I remember a brief discussion with Mark Hansen when I was out at Dunstan. We chatted a bit that he was telling me how he's only allowed to take a certain flow of water each day in his environment. And that sort of flows into any restrictions. So it's all good and well having the water source and the supply, but there's always different restrictions that you've got to consider around regional councils, around how much you can take, when you can take, and that's why it becomes critical to, and sometimes you have to put in a consent, which is a legal binding document, and that is needed in place. And can you see that final slide?
Yep.
So this is just a quick, just sort of looking at the process, starting from you're going to be requiring a water source, whether it be town, surface, ground, or recycled. And then that flows on to availability, the quality, the cost, and then obviously getting all the legal document in place to then have that availability, and that falls under your consenting. So at the source, very critical that all those hoops are gone through, and then you can begin your irrigation system from that point. And I think that is it. Thank you. Any question?
Thanks, Russell.
Well done. I'll just throw in a quick question. So in terms of your last slide, I think that's probably that's the real key sort of aspect to the water source is deciding based on your operation, what it's going to cost and how you're actually going to attain it. So do you have an idea of what is the most the ideal water source in terms of the turf operation, or does it differ between different operations?
Well, I suppose pH would play a big factor there. So probably understanding, if you're getting a town supply, I would hope you would have a look at what type of quality or what type of water you're going to be getting through. I don't know what is the best for turf, but there's so many variables in place. You probably find, a stream or whatever is brilliant, but whether you're going to have the volume available, I'm not so sure.
Yep, good point. So what about town supply? Like what I'm getting at is maybe just discussing the pros and cons of what you've got up there, because I think that's really important.
So I think the pros under town supply, it's pretty much always available, but it's expensive.
Yes.
So, whenever you're going to be, making a decision around, what type of thing to go for, and I've touched a bit on it in my machinery and equipment assessment, so, there's always, what is your purpose? So what are you going to be doing? Well, I've got so many hectares. This is how much I need. And then you start looking as to, right, so town supply can give it to me and say potentially a dam or a borehole, and then what type of quality am I getting? So it's a case of just assessing all those factors and then coming up to I would say, the most cost benefit decision, and also looking as to the time that it's going to potentially take you to get that consenting through, and for how long that consenting would last. And it could, and there will be a cost in that as well. Getting the relevant legal people to work with that on your behalf. So it's a case of weighing up all the variables and then coming to a decision on that, but also to give yourself options. Is that okay?
Yeah, good.
I think one good point you made there, Russell, was the distinction between volume of water and rate. You may not always have the water available at the correct rate to run your system. A lot of people miss that point. Oh, well done.
Thank
Good
you.
work.
Okay, excellent.
Well, there we go.
Is that up?
Look at that.
All right. So I've done water rates and run times, kind of bunched into one kind of thing because it's I found it quite a hard topic to kind of nail down to certain things because there's lots of variables. So I'll start off here with just a, where do we go there? Yeah. Because my tech was help me out. So water rates and run times. As I was explaining. So just starting off with water has many important roles within plants. If the water content in the tissue drops below 60%, the turf is seriously weakened and can die or go dormant. Water is not only essential for growth, but necessary for conditioning turfs to handle and recover from stress caused by heavy use and harsh environmental conditions. So that's just kind of a little bit of a background as to why we have to water a little bit. So factors to consider when deciding on your runtime. So soil texture, this influences the amount of water that can be stored and available for plant use. For example, coarse textures in soils such as sandy soils have poor water holding capacity and will need to be watered more frequently than soils with more clay and organic matter, which can hold more water in soil and can differ from field to field. Root depth. How deep do you want your roots to grow? It's all in the water. How much, how long, how often? These will determine how deep your roots grow. Evapotranspiration. Use ET to help determine supplementary watering needs. ET is the combination of water lost from the soil surface and the water used by plants through the process of transpiration. Rainfall. A rain gauge can be used to monitor rainfall. If rainfall provides 10 to 15 millimeters, you'll need to provide the additional amount of water. That's just any number. Depending on your soil and grass and evaporation and evapotranspiration amount, or ET. Maybe asking yourself, what else do I have for you? Well, supplementary water is necessary where natural rainfall is not usually sufficient to keep turf healthy after the soils have dried out. Temperature, sunlight, wind, humidity, and natural rainfall and climatic factors that help determine the amount of irrigation that is needed. Keys to proper watering. Irrigation should be supplied to replenish the amount of moisture lost. Monitor conditions and water only when needed. You can use a soil probe to moisture sensors to check the soil and see if it is wet to a depth just below the majority of your root system, which usually, depending on the field obviously and species, is about 100 to 150 mils. So this is just kind of more on what you're looking for. Obviously, we've all seen this before. So on your left is saturated, there's no air for the plant to grow. All pools are full and gravitational water is lost. So field capacity, what's round about what we're aiming for when we're watering, it's perfectly available for the plant to grow. And then there's your wilting point, there's no water whatsoever, so the plant's not able to kill off and complete the growing process. How long you water for is determined by how long it takes for your turf to reach field capacity. This can vary venue to venue depending on sprinkler output, water pressure, nozzle size, wind spray, etc. So when taking water off your thing. But what does this all mean, you may be asking yourself? Your water run times are affected by many different variables as mentioned above. It is important to take all these considerations into account when deciding on how long to run your water for. Soil structure, species, environment,
Environmental conditions and desired root growth all play a crucial role in determining how long to run your water for. Overwatering may lead to disease problems and thatch development. Best practice is to water deeply and less frequently, which may be 1 to 3 times a week. That's it.
Well done. Very impressive.
Very good. So as with the other ones, I'm gonna ask a question. So, what do you think is the most important way to determine how much water or when you need to water a turf area? How would you do that?
What is the most important way to determine when to water?
So how would you know when to water and how much to put on? How would you do that?
So obviously it changes in your seasons for one, but
Yep.
pretty much your rainfall and evapotranspiration will tell you when you need to water, and also like a moisture test. So if you're running a moisture test on your soil, but then you can also look for visuals, like maybe footprinting and stuff like that. When it's all shit that might be getting a bit thirsty, we'll chuck some water on. So visual signs of stress, as well as like monitoring your moisture levels in your soil profile.
Yeah, excellent. That's what I wanted to hear. I mean, like I said the other day when we were talking about irrigation, that we said, science and numbers is one thing, but at the end of the day, the best way is to go out and look. Use a moisture meter. Use your eyes. So that's great. Excellent work.
Well done. I thought that was 3 really good presentations there, John.
Yep, I agree. I think you guys have done really well. And it's not easy to put together your own work and to present it to an audience. So well done to all of you guys. You've done it in a professional manner. And what's also really good, I think, is that everyone who's watching it has also learned